AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We're going to get into the details of where this UAW strike is going. Gary Vasilesh not here. He's out traveling. In fact, there will not be an after hours next week because everybody's out traveling next week. But nonetheless, boy, what a crazy time it's been here in Detroit. I've had a steady parade of local TV crews coming in to interview me about what's going on with the strike. I'm doing all kinds of Zoom casts with other media outlets outside of the state. And boy, there's so much to get into right here. And I've got three people who are just perfect to talk to on this, including Laurie Harbour from Harbour Results. We've got Kalea Hall from the Detroit News, and also Sam Fiorani from AutoForecast Solutions. And hello, everybody. So cool to have you here.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
I don't know where to start this, so I'm just going to throw it out. Kalea, I'm going to start with you because you're the news reporter. You're on top of all this. And as everybody knows, as we record this show, this is Thursday afternoon. Tomorrow, Friday, Shawn Fain has set a deadline for noon. And if he doesn't get what he wants, he's closing down more plants. Kalea, what do you see happening?
I think he will have more plants go out tomorrow for sure. We'll find out at 10 a.m. which plants that he will pick. It's hard to say. I've seen a lot of experts suggest that it would make sense to go with the truck plants, which makes sense to me. But frankly, the UAW can pick whatever plants it wants, and it could pick 2 from GM, 1 from Ford, 1 from Stellantis. It just depends on how they're feeling in the moment. And right now, it seems like they're pretty far apart with all of them. So
you said 10 a.m. I thought the deadline was noon.
The deadline's new, but he's going to have a Facebook Live at 10 where he'll probably, I would assume in that Facebook Live, he will say, these are the folks that we're calling out to go on strike, and probably at noon is when they'll walk. So,
got it. Sam, what do you think? Any inclination as to the plants he wants to shut down?
Yeah, we're with Kalea. It's going to be a big truck plant, likely. If he does it the way they did the last one, it's going to be the same group of trucks. So it'll be all the full-size pickup truck plants, probably taking down a Ford plant, a GM plant, and a Stellantis large full-size truck plant. It makes sense that he would do that, but that would be really expensive. And we're looking at doubling the pay for the workers who are out of work, taking ever more money from that fund they've built.
Yeah. Laurie, what do you think? If you were Shawn Fain, do you shut down the big pickup trucks?
Well, I mean, certainly if you want to get the OEMs to move quickly, that's the way to do it, right? For me, it's all confusing because I thought he would have done that last week. The 3 plants he hit have virtually no impact in terms of pain, right? I mean, you got over inventory, not necessarily selling them right now because they're low on semiconductors. So, I would have thought he did it last week. But I mean, if he wants to make it move quicker, that's certainly going to be a good target for him. Plus, I think he might have thought the Unifor deal would have shut down F-150 powertrains, and that got solved. So now if he wants to go big, he's going to have to do that.
Yeah, we'll have to get back into that in a minute. But my thinking is everyone's saying they're going to shut down the full-size pickup trucks. And what Shawn Fain has shown himself really good at doing is doing the unexpected.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see him do something else. And he wants to inflict pain, but he doesn't want to kill these guys, at least not yet, I don't think. So I'm thinking, they've got all contingency planning set up, right? In case the pickup trucks go down, blah, 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 we do this, that, or the other thing. So do something totally different if you're Shawn Fain. That's my thinking.
I agree with that. I think that he surprised us all last week with that. And I don't really actually think he wants to inflict that much pain this quickly. He wants to keep them at the table, right? And it's a big impact on his members. And I also think he's thinking about his suppliers.
Yeah, and I've heard that some of the reasoning behind the original plants is that they weren't as connected to other plants, so they wouldn't have as much impact, like sending other workers out. Now we have seen Fairfax has been idled as a result of the Wentzville strike, but I've heard that that's gone into some of the decision making in terms of which plants do we select. Because if you select some, it will shut down. Like obviously, if you select a powertrain plant, it's going to take out a bunch of plants. then that really drains your strike fund quickly. So I didn't expect him to pick powertrain at all, but I would say that the ones that were selected some of them were surprising for sure.
Yeah, had that uniform strike gone into effect, that would have hit the truck plants in the U.S. real quick, because about a third of the powertrains for F-150s and Super Duties come from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question. Did Shawn Fain expect these layoffs at the plants that are affected by the ones that are on strike? So, you mentioned Fairfax is shut down. There's 2,000 people that are on layoff. Shawn has said he's going to pay them $500 a week. There's $1 million a week just in that plant alone. And then there's like another 950 on layoff at both Ford and Stellantis. So, I mean, you're starting to knock on the door of $2 million a week. Do you guys think that he saw that coming?
I think he for sure did. I'm sure that in fact, I know that there was knowledge of the fact that Wentzville did stamping for other plants. So, and I know that when it came to the Ford plant, they specifically only picked final assembly and paint, and they didn't pick another part of the plant because they stamp parts for, or they make parts
stamping and welding, right?
Right. So I know that there's knowledge of these things, and obviously they expect that there could be like ripple effects, but they tend to blame the automakers because they're the ones that force the strike to happen, right? So
yeah, he said that they didn't have to lay them off, but what are you going to do? Have these people just stand around for 8 hours a day doing nothing? I mean, come on, that's not real.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's Fairfax, so it's Malibu. Not a lot of Malibus moving through dealer lots right now.
Yeah, and Cadillac XT4, I think, is made that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the hit to GM directly was relatively minimal. I mean, you have Broncos and Wranglers and Gladiators, the other two, but the pickup trucks and the vans over at GM are relatively minor. So the fallout should have been expected.
Yeah. So how long could this go? I mean, I said from the very beginning, I felt it had to go a minimum of 2 weeks, but I want to get your guys' sense of how adamant is he? Because in my opinion, I'd love to hear what you guys say. They cannot agree to pensions. They cannot agree to a 4-day work week. Ford already caved on COLA and tiers, which kind of surprises me. And I'm not even sure they can agree to more retiree healthcare. I thought that's what the VIBA was all about. But how serious is Shawn about getting everything he wants, do you guys think?
Well, if you look at the way that the 32-hour work week has been quiet since the strike happened, they're moving a little bit. They've lowered the price from 40% to somewhere in the mid 30s. So there's some movement on that side, and we've got to expect it to hit between like 26% and 30% raise over 4 years. Maybe $600 to $6,500 of bonuses, but and a COLA adjustment of some sort. But like you said, the bringing retirees back into the fold just doesn't work in this day and age. Nobody gets that anymore, and finding that the automotive industry would do that for so much, where the stock price of those companies would take a real hit if they brought that cost back in the house.
I think he's pretty serious, John. I mean, I went back and did some analysis of times over the years working with my father on these negotiations, and we worked on both sides. We worked for the OEMs and we worked for the union. And I have not seen the kind of energy and vigor that he has in what some people might say sort of off the rails that I've ever seen in the 37 years I've been in the industry. And and to some degree, there's some good reason to fight, right? I mean, I get it. There needs to be some adjustment. Are his demands appropriate?
Yeah,
I don't think so. But I also think now he has laid such a stake in the grain with social media and all of the talk and all of the things that he has written, from union people commenting on your posts and Mark Royce's posts and everything that's been going on this week, there's got to be some amount of showing a win, right? And remember, you're talking about, what is it, 350,000 people in UAW membership that used to be 1.7 million back in the 80s. So, I mean, there's a huge need to fight, and I think he's got to save face with that, right?
Yeah, when I talk to auto workers on the line, all of them they seem to really like Shawn, and they are supporting what he says, and they agree that they want back what they feel like they is rightfully owed to them. They're also sick of working across from somebody who makes like $10 less than them, but is doing the same thing. One auto worker put it this way: he felt like the last administration, they had like a business relationship with the auto workers, and now the automakers, and now he feels like, as a worker, he's actually the center, the focus of this. And one of the things he pointed out to me is in 2006 he made $28 an hour. In 2023 he's making 32. So from his perspective, they have given up a lot, and he's totally backing what Shawn Fain says, and he's hoping they push this out and they get all the things that they asked for.
Yeah. Look, I'm all for them getting a whole lot more money, because you're right, Kalea. If you inflation adjust what they've been getting, they should be making $40 an hour right now. They really should, on an inflation adjusted basis. Now, they've had inflation protection, but I'm saying their base wage should be higher than it is right now. But here's where I'm getting at. I'm all for them getting paid more money. I'm all for them getting better profit sharing. Taking 8 years to make the full transition, that's crazy. I mean, come on, get out of here. And sweeten the retirement and things like that. But my question is, do the workers really think that they're going to get full pensions, a 4-day work week, something akin to a jobs bank and all that? Because I don't think that the car companies can agree to do that. Those are the legacy costs that drove them into bankruptcy, back during the Great Recession. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out here is, I love what you guys were saying, that you think Shawn's going to push it all the way to get everything. But I'm telling you, the car companies can't agree to that. So, I mean, I said I think the strike's going to go on for 2 weeks. But if he's trying to get everything and the membership thinks he's going to get everything, the strike is going to Christmas.
Yeah. I was in the 8 to 10 weeks phase before the whole thing started last week. So, because I think he's going to fight for a ton. And I agree with you, John. I mean, we know the numbers. They're going to be ragingly uncompetitive if they accept all these things, right? You're just handing market share to the Japanese and the Germans by doing that, right?
Yeah.
And Tesla.
If this drags out any length of time, it's just diminishing returns. The less market share, the less demand for employees, the less workers, and the lower stock price on these companies, they have less money to give to the workers in the end. It's just it runs out of energy after 3 or 4, definitely 5 or 6 weeks.
Right, but the pain is real for the people on strike. I mean, $500 a week. I mean, for a lot of people, that's not going to pay their house payment, for the month, or certainly house and food. I mean, it's all great right now where, you're full of energy and you're ready to take it to these car companies. But Laurie, if you're right, 6 to 10 weeks living on $500 a week, yowza, there's got to come a time when they go to Shawn and say, hey, look, you got enough already.
Right. I agree. And I'm not really in that space anymore. I think it's going to be less than that. But the pain is real for them, and it's going to be real for the supply chain, even if it goes past Friday. I mean, 1 week, our data shows 1 week and 2 weeks, and you start to see a real fallout from suppliers. So, and I think the union's going to get just as uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our big fear is when the tier 2s and tier 3s start falling apart, when they can't pay their bills and they start closing doors. It snowballs after that point, and there's no benefit to the union at that point.
So, Sam, how long is that? How long can the suppliers hold on?
Some of these smaller suppliers won't last a month if the strike is down that long. They just need to have that income, and we're talking about dozens of workers in some of these small suppliers. So once you stop the income from the OEMs, they've got to run out of money in a month.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject. What 1 sec, Laurie, because Wayne Wallace is asking, do strikers typically get back pay? No way. If you're on strike, you walked away from your
Yeah.
job. They're not going to give you back pay for walking away from your job. Sorry, Laurie, you were going
No,
to
it's
say.
okay. We just finished our annual benchmarking study. It was based on calendar year 22. We had a 50% growth out of 400 automotive companies in trouble. So
You're
it went
talking
from
suppliers.
suppliers, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, went
Wow.
from 20% troubled to 30% troubled. And that was 22 data. If I look at the pulse of the first 9 months, everybody's down 10 to 15%. So we did a pulse last week, and of 180 companies, they had something like 45% that are saying after 4 weeks, I'm financially strained. And even if they can hunker down, their problem's winding back up again when the spigot goes on, because they're on borrowing based kind of banking relationships. Well, if I don't bill, I don't collect cash. And so if they don't have a good relationship, they can't buy resin, they can't buy steel, they can't buy, aluminum. So we're incredibly concerned that beyond 2 weeks, I mean, you're going to see some fall just at a week because they were already in trouble.
Right. So, Laurie, I saw your study, and one of the words that you used is that these companies are unbankable. I've stolen that term. Now, I am giving you credit when I use your term that I got it from you, but explain to the audience what you mean by unbankable.
Yeah, so we're measuring profitability against their debt to earnings ratio. And basically, the banks don't like people that are over about 3.5 to 4 to 1 on their debt to earnings ratio. Because at the end of the day, if you're also not generating profit, you won't have enough cash to cover your debt service. So we have, again, about 400 companies, and 30% of them are, and some are at 6 and 7%. So their balance sheet is just leveraged to the hilt. And then on top of it, they're not making any profit. So they're not generating cash. At the end of the day, the cash is king, right? And so if their banks would say, you're not bankable to me, go find somebody else. I mean, we're in 8 restructuring deals right now just to try to save them.
So by unbankable, you mean you can't get money from the bank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's led to that? Like, what are what's caused this for them? The pandemic?
Well, I mean, certainly the pandemic had a bit to do with it, because they actually lost on both sides. If you remember in 21, durable goods demand, I don't care if you're in auto or appliances, went up 40%.
Yeah.
So they had to strain to get people and to build product well above where they were pre-pandemic. Then you started the supply chain crisis, and not just semiconductors, couldn't get resin, couldn't get steel, couldn't get fasteners. And so they couldn't meet demand. So although their top line was showing some revenue, they still weren't meeting, expectations. And then, you hit the semiconductors, so volume hits down. Like it was one hit after another. Frankly, we were just getting our sea legs about us in the summertime. And starting to really make money. And then all of a sudden the fear of strike hits. And I already have tier 2 suppliers that make seat components for Wayne truck that are down, not making production right now. And for a $30 million shop, that could be $5 million a year annualized, right?
Yeah, it's amazing what we've been through in the past few years. We had the 40-day strike in 2019, and then we went right into COVID, and then we went right into semiconductors and all these other supply chain issues. It's been a very intense time.
Keep in mind too that these guys are a lot of family-owned small businesses, privately held. They didn't all handle their PPP federal funding the best way.
What, they bought Maseratis? Is that what you're saying?
and boats, motorcycles.
Right. You know what? It's not just the tier 2s and 3s. I was talking to a tier 1 executive. What's today? Thursday. Last night. And this is one of the major not US based, multinational, one of the biggies. And he was saying they're running out of cash. They have a very strong balance sheet, but they're running out of cash, and they may have to furlough people. Sam, I don't know. Have you looked into this? The impact on not just the 2s and 3s?
Yeah, the bigger suppliers that we deal with are not quite that bad yet, but this is a big deal when you're supplying large portions of large vehicles to keep your income going. You can shut down a plant or 2 or 3 if the production ends for what is the base of your income. if that plant shuts down, you're going to lay off hundreds of people real quick.
We should talk about the political fallout of all this too, because as all these people get laid off, if they are in the union and especially on a complex that's striking, they're probably not going to get unemployment. But as you guys know, there's a ripple effect. For every one automotive job on the line, there's, I don't know, at least 7 other jobs in the economy. The people who have the restaurants that are around and the gas stations and blah, 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 blah. And they're going to start filing for unemployment. And here's all these state governors that are going to go, crikey, this strike's going to bleed our unemployment fund dry. Kalea, have you heard anything about this?
Oh, yeah. And I actually thought about the fact of like how they selected the plants. Like Whitmer is obviously a Democrat and pro-union, and they selected one plant here. And I kind of wondered if that was part of the strategy to not. There's obviously a lot of assembly plants in Michigan, and you could easily hit 2 or 3. So yeah, we're very much watching what all of the politicians are saying. Biden was supposed to send a team up here, but then didn't do that, I guess. And then next week, of course, we have Trump visiting on the 27th, and he's supposed to meet with some auto workers. So yeah, we're trying to pay attention to how this affects, especially we're coming on obviously a very important election year, and how this affects Biden and all the governors too.
Yeah.
I had a great opportunity last week, John, to work with MEMA and some other lobbyists on talking to the White House.
And just so everybody knows, MEMA, Motor Equipment Manufacturers Association. So,
yeah, sorry.
For those who don't know, right.
And it was good because we had a really direct line right into the White House. It was the team of people that you've read about in the media that are working on, do we need to come up with funding for these tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers?
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and I get it, it's politics, but they really don't understand manufacturing on any level, right? And it's just some from their questions and their comments, right? And although they want to help, they're not sure how to do that. And it's a very difficult, there is federal funding available to do it, but I think because we're in a political environment right now, we're in an election, theoretically, right? They're not sure where to step, right? And remember, the union hasn't backed Biden yet, so that creates a little bit of a hiccup in it.
All right.
And I don't know if yet's the right term. Maybe they won't.
So Sam, that's really interesting. Kalea raised a really good point there. Whitmer's a Democrat. Presumably, the union doesn't want to hurt Democrats. Ohio's got a Republican governor. I confess I don't even know what's in Missouri. Who's is it a Republican or Democrat there? But what I'm getting at is, should we look for the union to spread the pain so that Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri don't have more plant shutdowns? And if that's the case, where would you go?
Well, I was thinking about her point in Michigan being so many plants there. You take Wayne down, and the local economy isn't that affected because there's so much other stuff there. But when you get to Missouri, you're talking about a larger portion of the local economy, and that's going to hurt the locals. That's going to hurt the politicians because the local economy has taken a bite. So it will definitely fall out around these smaller areas. And then when you tap into the next wave, we're talking about potentially Louisville. We're talking about another plant in Ohio for Ford. There are a number of areas where it will snowball this whole thing. And we could look at Indiana. We could look at a number of other areas that could be the next wave when this comes up tomorrow.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, why not go to Texas? Shut down Arlington.
Yeah.
Arlington has to be on the list, but that's a huge plant.
Right, right. And you said Indiana. I mean, I love talking to you guys because I mean, you got my wheels turning here. Maybe that's the strategy now: is hit individual states. Don't double up in a state for 2 reasons. Number one, you go to another state, you get mega media coverage in that state. And number 2, now you're not putting the burden, on states that have got plants. you're spreading the pain, so to speak.
Yeah, I did just look it up, and the governor of Missouri is Republican. So
Okay, there you go. It'll be
Texas
fascinating
makes- Texas makes sense though, John, because you also hit one of the biggest
Right.
profit generators of General Motors, right? So
the biggest.
yeah, I would
That
not
is
be
the
surprised
most
if Darlington-
profitable plant. It might be the most profitable plant in the world.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
So if we hit Texas, we hit Kentucky, and then you're left with a Stellantis plant in Michigan again.
No,
Stellantis, I feel like doesn't have its footprint isn't as it doesn't spread across the country as much, right?
Right.
yeah. But you've got Tennessee. GM's got a plant in Tennessee. I mean, there's a
Yes.
lot of plants that they could go to, and I'm wondering if that's not going to be the union strategy.
It
Yeah, I
definitely
don't
is
think-
different for Stellantis, though. You're right, Kaylee, because most of their plants are in Michigan.
That's what
Yeah.
I thought. Yeah, I don't see them coming out tomorrow and picking 3 plants in Michigan. For
Yeah.
sure.
No.
I don't think that they will do that. Because I do think that's got to be part of the strategy, right?
No, look, if they pick Michigan again, Governor Whitmer is going to be hopping mad.
Well,
She's-
so to their point, if it's Stellantis, that's probably going to be a Michigan plant, unless it's a powertrain plant.
Well, so
Right.
what if they don't hit one of each again?
Right.
What
they
if
could
what if
pick-
somebody's making more progress in their union negotiations
Right.
and they hit somebody who's not? Or
Right.
Well, it seems to me Ford's making more progress. Like I said, they've already agreed to COLA. They've already agreed to get rid of the tiers. They're talking, I can't remember the exact number, but a significant cash increase in payment. So does Ford, is it in more of the union's good graces than the others?
Well, it's clear to me that GM is not, given the recent op-eds in the Detroit Free Press by GM President Mark Royce defending the company, and then today the union vice president Mike Booth responding to him. It seems that they are both pretty far apart. So
And Ford has made an agreement with Unifor right now, so the Ford seems to be on a roll.
That seems to put more pressure on the UAW, right? That Ford seemingly, I mean, have they signed an agreement? We know that now it's got to go to membership, right?
Membership,
And,
yeah.
and
Right.
get voted on. But if they approve it, and all the Unifor officers are saying, hey, this is a great deal and blah, 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 they're not saying, well, we sort of got a good deal. But that puts pressure on the UAW, I would think.
Yeah, the Unifor seems to be very happy with the deal that they got with Ford, and you got to think that the UAW was hoping for a help in Canada for them to go on strike, just to put pressure on everybody.
yeah,
But
this
we don't
one
know how
expert-
rich the deal is.
right. This one expert I
don't.
talked to, he said, the auto workers in Canada are definitely watching what's happening with the UAW, and they see how militant Shawn Fain is and how direct he is and what they want, and they'll be looking at that deal to see if they got more than what they've received in this, whatever is in this TA. So
Yeah, I've been told it's really good.
So one of the things that the Canadians were asking for were pensions. Do you think they got that, Sam?
The whole pension thing is a problem. Just I don't know how finances work in Canada, but the Canadians have better health care. There are a lot of things that they don't have that we have in our contracts. But pensions are the thing that they've worked so hard to take off their books, and to put something back on there. It's everything is focused on the stockholder and stockholder value. And when you tax yourself like that, it just brings down all the work that you've done over the last decade.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're almost at the half-hour point. Let's take a quick commercial break, very brief. We'll be back, and we got a lot more to talk about yet.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is their Bridgestone.
And we're back talking all about the UAW and what's going on there. I'd like to get your guys' input on how the automakers have been handling it. And Kalea, I'm going to start with you again, because you were just talking about this, the op-ed that Mark Royce and then Mike Booth had in the Detroit Free Press. no disparaging intended here, but did anybody under 40 years old read the newspaper? Did anybody under 50? Here's Shawn Fain live streaming on Facebook, live streaming on YouTube. They're using all kinds of social media. And I don't know if you saw the video that GM put up with Mark Royce and Gerald Johnson.
Yes.
It was so stilted. It was so scripted.
Yeah.
I mean, the points they made were fine for GM, but I bet you virtually nobody watched it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give my opinion of of their strategy, but it is quite different from the GM strategy. How they're releasing the information is definitely quite different from which is you're right, they're using social media. There's a new video every day, and this morning we were all laughing a little bit because Shawn Fain tweeted a bunch of different movies of people saying TikTok, TikTok. And it's just, it kind of gets people excited, and they're paying attention to it because it's funny. So I think they're really trying to have direct engagement with their members, but then they're also trying to make this interesting for everybody to want to watch, right? So yeah, they definitely have different strategies, and I think it's worth evaluating, and maybe a story will come out of the Detroit News down the line of how they're handling their messaging on both sides. So
I think that some of what Shawn Fain is doing with social media is likened to what Elon Musk does or Donald Trump, right? I mean, we've seen witness over the last 5 years that leveraging marketing and social media that attracts is something that the younger generation watches and cares about. And like you said, it's fun, it's interesting, right?
Yeah,
we can get people to watch it. And our traditional OEMs have not gone into that realm of communication at that level. So, some would say it's marketing genius, right?
Yeah, they've definitely stayed more, I don't know if professional is the word, but they've, stayed this kind of stuffy messaging that they're not really trying to appeal to other crowds beyond the ones that they already have. So
Yeah, GM is the most staid of the three. The executives there are the way they have been for decades. You look at any story of General Motors and they fit that mold of the corporate person. And so it makes sense that they would go the old school route of hitting a newspaper as opposed to going on Twitter or Facebook or where have you.
Yeah, but I can understand the executives thinking that way, but they hire some of the best communication people that they can get their hands on. And I've been appalled at how they've tried to counter Shawn's messaging. They're not even in his league. I think, look, I'm a communications guy. I mean, if there's one thing I understand more than anything is how to communicate. And they don't know what they're doing, or what they're doing is incredibly ineffective. Not the TikTok video that you just mentioned, Kalea, but the one before that. The last I looked, it had 70,000 views on on YouTube. GM put its video on its media website. I don't know if they put it on YouTube, but that's where I found it. I'll bet it has next to no views on it. Certainly not anywhere close to what Shawn Fain is. And I mean, these guys got to wake up. I mean, Shawn Fain has defined what the issues are, not just to his membership, but to the media and to the American public. He is driving the narrative of what this strike is about. And the automakers are losing in the court of public opinion.
I was hoping you'd show there the trash can.
The trash can was so effective. Yeah. It was brilliant. Look, I stand in awe of Shawn Fain's communication skills. And I'm sure he didn't come up with this. I understand he's got a bunch of people from the Obama campaign who really know what they're doing. And it really shows. And I'm stunned that these car companies are just left floundering. Ford has communicated to me, but I'm sure to you too, Kalea, and maybe Sam and Laurie, you too. And they send out these good bullet points and everything like that, but they're relying on us in the media to carry their message. And I haven't heard peep from Stellantis, nothing, zero communication. Now, I mean, maybe they just ignore me and they don't care what I have to say whatsoever, but I haven't heard from them. GM has given me good background information, really good background information. But again, they're relying on the media, to get their message out there, which I don't want them to cut them off from giving this great background info. But what I'm saying is they better wake up because they're getting their butts kicked.
To give GM some credit, they did go on, I can't remember which day that was now, but Mary went on a media blitz. I think it was Friday morning.
It was Friday. Good Morning America with Michael Strahan. That's a good interview.
Well, she went on there. Was she also on the Today Show? She was on, I think, CNBC. So you're right. I mean, they're not taking to TikTok. They're not taking to Twitter, but you're right. They're going to the media and they're going to the big names. I think she was also on CNN. I can't remember. It was so many. I had to cover each one. And she was pretty direct in what she said, is that she was very frustrated. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't, like in the past, we haven't really seen the executives come out and speak directly to how they're feeling in the talks like that. So I guess from GM's point of view, at least she is getting out there in front of CNN and saying that. So
she's also arguably the most prominent of all the executives of the Detroit Three. So she should be out there. There has been some talk from Ford from when they saw that the wave was going the wrong direction. But like you said, Stellantis has been quiet.
Yeah.
And GM and Ford should have been even louder than they have been.
One of the problems with having the CEOs or the COO and Mark Stewart's at Stellantis' standpoint is the first thing anyone's going to counter with to like a Mary Barr is you make $28 million a year.
Yeah.
Or to Farley, you make $21 million a year. And that just cuts the legs out from under them. And so I'm not sure that you should use the CEO to take that message, because there's no way, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, there's no way in hell that you're going to argue that $28 million is actually a very reasonable amount of money that any CEO should get. I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying that the American public does not think that that's right.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the CNN reporter, but she drilled Mary on that. And after that, the UAW has repeatedly mentioned how she responded. So I think it backfired for sure.
No, you make a good point about how much she makes, because it's going to be a point if she comes on any interview. It should be. But the problem is if you have Shawn Fain on one side and an underling to Mary Barra coming up on the other side, it doesn't have the same weight.
No, you're right. You're right. But, I would think that you pick somebody who's got the charisma, who's one layer down, that gets out there and talks very frankly. So what works on YouTube? Not scripted presentations. And so, and look, Mark Royce, I really admire the guy. I think he's terrific. And Gerald Johnson, his manufacturing guy, is really good too. But when the video starts out, they're both on camera, and Mark turns to Gerald and says, "Hey, Gerald, how's it going?" And he turns and they shake hands and, "Hey, how's it going?" Well, that's so stilted. That's so scripted. I don't know who put that video together, but right off the bat, that was wrong. What works is sitting down in front of a camera. So, and then get the garbage can out. Thank you. Use some props, but speak from the heart. Speak from the heart, and talk about how you want to get all this resolved and you understand their issues, but that they have to understand you've got issues too. And if you agree to everything, there is no more company. But it's a long way of me of saying, boy, I've been stunned at their way of trying to communicate their issues.
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. It's they're not playing on the same level. The two different teams are not hitting the right mark. And perhaps the writers for the GM team were supposed to be doing a presentation at the Detroit show, and they were canceled because there were no introductions of note there. That sounds like an old school introduction at a Detroit show introduction.
That's right. So what else? What else is on your mind there, Laurie, regarding this that I haven't brought up yet?
Well, we've talked about a ton of it. I obviously the battery electric vehicle piece of this is very significant. I mean, they don't talk as much about it when they talk about wages and things, but the job security piece of this is a big deal.
Yeah.
When I look at the negotiations now, it's certainly General Motors is leading the way with the number of plants, and we all know it takes 60% of the normal labor or whatever depending on the car, whatever that is, less than that with people compared to a nice product. And that's part of it. Now, fast forward 4 years from now, and we start talking about battery electric vehicle plants that are at a much more significant level. Stellantis will actually have some at that point that are fully dedicated.
Yeah.
I don't think this ends in 4 years, right? I mean, unless they're able to really get a lot of what they want to get now. So the battery electric vehicle piece is important. And also, I know we talked about suppliers already, but ZF is in their own union negotiations down at their plant in Tuscaloosa, and they walked out yesterday.
No, they didn't. In fact, we reported that in Autoline Daily, and I take full responsibility for having said that. They did not walk out. They're on strike, but the plant is still building axles, and I thought this was going to shut down Mercedes-Benz, because it's a just-in-time plant. I mean, one or two shifts and you're out of axles. Right. But in point of fact, that plant is still operating.
Oh, well, that's even better then. So, but I mean, the reality is that if this continues past tomorrow, we're going to see a lot more fallout, especially if what we talked about on the top of the hour, they hit a truck plant. So,
yeah.
To follow up on Laurie's point, the electric vehicles are the future. So if you don't have an electric vehicle or an electrified vehicle in your plant, it's at risk in the next contract or two. So that's where Canada steps up, because most of their plants already have a dedicated EV coming to their plant. So that helped the negotiations up there. But when you look at the plants like Michigan Assembly has at best a hybrid. So ICEs are not going away soon, but you got to prepare for the future so that these employees have a job in 10 years.
Yeah, Sam, great point, because I was talking to a representative of the Canadian government who said, look, if Ford and Unifor settle and the others fall in line, Canada is going to be the beneficiary of more investment, because investors are going to say, hey, this is a much more stable situation. Let's go put our money there instead of anything that's got to do with the UAW.
Yeah, well, and if we get the wage increases that the UAW is asking for, then Canada is not as uncompetitive as we once thought they were, because the U.S. plants will be less competitive.
Yeah, and I want to go back to an issue that you raised there, Laurie, that EV plants use less labor, because General Motors says no, it's the same, and they're the only ones in the industry I've heard. Just about everyone else is saying you need 25 to 30% less labor in an assembly plant that makes EVs.
Absolutely. I mean, we've studied it. We've got, BEV studies. We did a study with Sam and his team too, and on BEVs. And there is absolutely no doubt. Just look at the Hummer plant itself, or the Hummer product itself. It's got one trim level. I don't have all of the space issues, because I don't have all the trim issues. Now, will we reach that tipping point in 10 or 20 years when we're driving more BEVs and we add back in trim levels? But just the sheer chassis line, the powertrain line, it's fact. So we have the data. It absolutely takes less people. I mean, you've seen it from the Tesla piece, right?
Absolutely. So why is GM saying this? Just so its workers don't get scared, or do they really believe it?
Well, you got to prepare that story for the workers. You have to tell them that your jobs are safe, because these factories aren't going anywhere. But if you're looking at converting to an EV, it's going to take fewer people. If it's 5%, if it's 30%, it's still going to take fewer people to assemble all those electric vehicles.
Yeah, I've seen some studies where it's like the assembly process is like 80% of the assembly process is similar, and it's expected that over time we will see a drop in workers. But I think that from GM's perspective, the point is that initially they won't need to, because you're ramping up, right? So it's going to take some time. Now with the transition to like building drive units, I understand is like does not take as much time at all as it does to build a multi-shift transmission. So I think it's going to definitely we'll see some reductions at powertrain plants, and we already have, right? Like look at 2019, we lost GM shut down Warren Transmission, they shut down the Baltimore operations. So, and I don't know if that's a result of transitioning to electric vehicles, but there has been a reduction in those plants. So, the workers I talked to, this one worker, she did work at a powertrain facility, and she transferred. She was nervous about it and transferred to Factory Zero because she knew that she'd have a job there because they're going to make electric vehicles, and GM has said that's our future. So she got out of there. The folks who work at like the big truck plants, they don't seem as nervous. They feel like they're going to be sustained for a long time, for at least the next decade. So.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing going for the UAW workers, probably almost any, as you all know, it's so hard to get people right now. Everybody's complaining about it. And so when you look at where some of these battery plants are going, the big 3 battery plants, GM in Lansing, Stellantis in Indiana, they're right next to or very nearby existing facilities, because the idea, the strategy is we're just going to take people from the ICE facilities or the traditional plants and put them in the battery plants, because these people want to keep their jobs. We want to keep, the car companies want to keep them. And so it's been very interesting to see where the Detroit 3 have been placing their battery plants, because it's definitely to try to keep the workforce they've got.
If you look at the Ultium plant that was in Ohio that just got organized, those workers were making slightly more than a cashier at the local McDonald's. So they needed to pay these people for what is a good job, and so the union stepping in there raised their pay rate above the person at the local Acme.
Well, I would argue it was the marketplace that raised it. Guess what? GM found out, and all the rest of them have found out, you can't hire workers at $16.50 an hour to work in a factory. They get in there, they work a day or two, and they go, "This sucks, I'm out of here."
Yeah.
And so GM raised those wages to $20 an hour. But it wasn't to placate the union or be a nice corporation. It's because they couldn't get people. And, look at what happened at Ford last year. They took 3,000 temporary workers and made them full-time. Why? Because the turnover was horrific. They'd hire people, they'd train people, they'd work a while and go, "I don't like this, I'm out of here. I'm not making enough money." So Ford found out, and Ford told me this, it was cheaper to make them full-time and pay much better wages than to constantly have this turnover of hiring, training, and quitting.
Yeah. Go ahead, Laurie.
It's an $18,000 to $19,000 per person cost when you bring somebody in to recruit, attract, recruit, train, and then they quit. So it's dead on that they would convert those people. And the question that goes back to what you've been talking about in social media, John, like what's the right number for pay for these people? We can all argue that whether 29 million is the right number. Go to any other industry, GE, Boeing, these guys make more than Mary Barra does, but nonetheless, what's the right number for the worker? Because you've got supplier people in tier 2 wages, making $17-18 an hour. They would love what the UAW is getting paid today.
Yeah.
Look, I'd love for them to get it. And this is what's so interesting about Shawn Fain. There's a whole new labor revolution going on in the United States that was kicked off by the COVID pandemic that shut everything down. A lot of people reassessed their lives and said, "Wait a minute, what am I doing here? What do I want to do?" And as the labor market got tight, anybody making minimum wage, which is what, $8.50 an hour? I mean, that's a joke. They quit immediately and went and got a $12 an hour job. And the people making $12 quit and got 16, and the 16 went to 20, and so on and so forth. So what Shawn Fain has tapped into, and most of America would agree with it, this is a battle between the 1% and everybody else. This is between the rich and the poor. This is between people striving to earn a decent living without having to scrape by or get 2 or 3 jobs to do it. And that message really resonates with America.
So, John, what happens after they get these increases? What does this mean for USMCA and plants in Mexico and other sourcing to other regions? Again, I'm not fighting that they need more pay, but do we think that OEMs might build more plants in Mexico?
I don't know if they'll build more plants in Mexico, because guess what? You can't hire people in Mexico either. You know, I was down in Monterrey, Mexico earlier this year, and you know, GM's got plants there, Stellantis has got plants there. There's all kinds of supplier facilities there. Guess who just is dropping a brand new plant into Mexico? Elon Musk. That's exactly where their Mexican plant is going. And the people that I talked to down in the Monterey area were like, oh, it's already so hard to get people. And now Elon's come in and he's just sucked all the jobs out of the area. They can't get people. So I think Mexico may have reached saturation point.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. But your point is absolutely right, Laurie. I mean, you're on the board of directors or you're in top management, and it's like, holy moly, we got to spend $11 billion in capital expenditures next year on all the shift to EVs, which is what Mark Royce has said at GM. On top of that, we got to spend another $8 billion just in R&D. So right off the bat, you're at $18 billion. They don't even make that in profit. And that's every year you've got to do that. And thank God the market's healthy enough right now that they're making profits. And as you all know, this is a cyclical industry. Sales will go down again. And then instead of making billions, they're going to be losing billions.
Yeah.
But, so if, to your point, Laurie, if I've got a decision of where do I invest all my money, I'm going to try to go to the low cost area. And it's not going to be with UAW.
It wasn't the original idea of NAFTA to bring up the pay of Mexican workers so that they could buy our stuff, so we could send stuff from Canada and the U.S. down to Mexico, as well as shipping them out of there. You want to bring their pay up, and all these new plants going down there is supposed to do that. You know, take in all the people who aren't employed or underemployed, give them real pay, and suddenly they're competitive with U.S. and Canadian workers.
Well, I don't know about competitive. Wage rates are going up in Mexico. And one of the aspects of the USMCA was to really put pressure on these Mexican almost company unions that just agreed to whatever that management wanted. They're getting voted out in some cases, and wages are going up, but it's still a big gap, and with the new UAW contract, it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, doesn't USMCA start a minimum of like $16 an hour for certain parts in the automotive industry? So you've got to see some of those jobs in Mexico actually getting to pay levels that are on par with some of the U.S. plants.
Yeah. Well, look, that would help a lot. So would if the union could ever organize the transplants. And that's what when I first thought that ZF was going out on strike and stopping production, and that would have brought the Mercedes plant to a screeching halt. I thought that was actually part of the union strategy, because and I in fact on WWJ this morning on my report I said that once the strike is settled, and it will happen at some point, Shawn Fain has an obligation to try and go out and organize the transplants. And as you all know, the union's been spectacularly unsuccessful in organizing them. But, you know, all he's going to do is make the Detroit 3 less competitive against the transplants. They're going to get more market share. That's going to eliminate union jobs.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, beyond that, he's also got to organize a bunch of battery plants. So
yeah,
that's right.
Definitely has his work cut out for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
can he do it, Laurie? How would you go out and organize the transplants? I'm going to make you a union organizer now.
I don't think he has a chance. I mean, you and I know the differences between running those plants, right? I mean, the Japanese do a very good job
of treating their people well.
Right. And interestingly enough, don't give the kind of profit sharing that the D3 do, right. And are paying slightly less. Right. But people are excited about working in those facilities, and their turnover rates are very low.
When was last time that the UAW tried? Does anybody remember?
Volkswagen was a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But what about Honda and Toyota?
Honda, they've made runs at in the past, but that's quite a while ago. They've mainly gone after Nissan.
Yeah.
But here's where I think the union strategy is completely flawed. They try to make it all about social justice, and they bring in all these social justice leaders. And I would, if I were organizing the plant, I'd go into one of those transplants and say, hey, you see how much profit sharing I got? I got $14,000. How much did you get? Oh, you got nothing? Boy, you guys need a union. Let's talk about your health care. You make all kinds of monthly payments and co-pays? You do? Oh, we can fix that for you. I think you got to appeal to their pocketbook, to their paycheck, to their wallet. Forget this social justice stuff. I'm all for social justice, right? But it hasn't worked for 40 years.
Well, especially at a time when inflation is at an all-time high and interest rates are high, hit their pocketbook. It's going to change their sentiment. You said it earlier. That's what's got the UAW so excited. And again, the marketing prowess of him out doing rallies and getting people excited. It's just like other marketing experts. So
yeah. Well, hey guys, we got a question here. Ambidextrous K, how long do you think the strike will last? Worst case. Okay, we're going to do a round table here, and this is going to be the end of the show. Kaylee, worst case.
Worst case for me would be 2024. January 2024.
Okay. Laurie?
I think worst case is 8 weeks, but I think it's going to be closer to 4.
Ooh, okay. I hope you're right. Sam?
Yeah, I'm in the 3 to 4 as best case, and November is worst case. But Kaylee put it out there, and the potential is there for that to happen. Now I'm dreading this whole next 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, we had the GM, we had 50,000 workers out for GM 2019 for 40 days. If we just slowly continue to add workers, to the picket lines, I think they could take this a long time.
I just want everyone to know Kaylee called it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, I hope we're all closer to Laurie's 4 weeks. In fact, I hope it's even sooner than that. My worst case is Christmas, just before Christmas.
Yeah.
But anyway, with that, we're going to wrap it up. But hey, Kaylee Hall, Laurie Harbour, Sam Fiorani, you guys have been fantastic. Great insights. And I'm going to have to come back and watch this show again and take notes on what you said. It's that good.
Yes. Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
for having us, John.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the AutoLine channel.